What's up, Earth Rockers? It's your boy Shovitar, back again to talk about a different game. Um, I described my feelings for Belmont's Revenge, the last video that I uploaded, as somewhat mixed. My feelings for Super Castlevania 4 are even more so. They are complicated. I also want to point out, before I get into that though, sort of what this is. This is the second loop, or the hard mode, of Super Castlevania 4. This is also the Japanese version, just because there's a couple of graphical differences between the US and Japanese version, and I think the Japanese version has the superior graphical elements that are unique to that version. And I'll point those out when they crop up. Because it's really only a couple of... The UI is slightly different, but really it's just a couple of things in the later levels. Anyway, actually that's not true. There's a few details in even the early levels that are only in the Japanese version, because the US version, at the time, didn't want to have any crosses anywhere. This is back when they were still dedicated to that goofy idea of not having crosses in Castlevania. So, there's going to be a couple of headstones that have crosses on them in level 1 that did not have that in the US version. So, none of that is super important, but I just thought I would mention it in case anybody wonders why this is the Japanese version. As for why this is hard mode, it's because I never finished a hard mode, no-death run of Super Castlevania 4 when I first went through the games. I got close, but I basically choked at the very end and just said fuck it. I figured if I was going to go back and complete challenges that I hadn't completed in the past, this was a good candidate for that. And also because when I released my first videos about Super Castlevania 4, I was pretty negative. And part of the reason I'm going back through and playing all these games again is to reevaluate my opinions before I sort of finalize what I think of the series as a whole, to revise my opinions for individual games. So with Super Castlevania 4, I was like, well, I didn't like it the first time I played it, you know, maybe I was missing something, maybe there's something in the game, maybe it'll click this time. It did not. My opinion of Super Castlevania 4 remains essentially unchanged. If anything, it's actually slightly worse. And I know that this game is beloved by a lot of people, so I'm gonna try to, be very, fair about this and even-handed. And before I really get into the criticisms, I'm gonna talk about the things about this game that I like. The music is great. I think that the environment designs are good. I think the color palette is a little bit limited, although the Japanese version makes that better. And that's basically all I have to say as far as the praise goes. To talk about Super Castlevania 4 more generally, for people who aren't familiar with it, Super Castlevania 4 is probably, of the classic Castlevania games, the one that is the most distinct in terms of how it plays. Because Simon here has, as I've already demonstrated, he has 8-way whipping. He has full air control. These are both innovations in the franchise at this point. 8-way whipping, or multi-directional whipping, was considered for Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, but ultimately scrapped. And I think that a lot of the same people who worked on Dracula's Curse worked on Super Castlevania 4, or there was some personnel overlap there. I guess I'll talk about that first, because that is, I think, the most relevant aspect of Super Castlevania 4 that is unique to it, is the 8-directional whipping. I'm not really a big fan of it. And I'm not really a big fan of it for 2 reasons. The first reason, the primary reason, is that it just kind of complicates the controls in a way that the Castlevania 1 and Castlevania 3 single-directional whip did not. And what I mean by that is, let's say that I want to whip something that's, diagonally above me. Well, that involves holding forward and up and attack. And so if I want to do that multiple times and I want to keep those buttons held down, now I'm like shuffling forward as I'm whipping multiple times because I'm hitting right. That's pretty annoying. The other reason that I'm not crazy about multi-directional whipping is that it basically completely removes like sub-weapons as a decision that you have to make. Despite being made by some of the same people who made Dracula's Curse, the whole strategic element of Dracula's Curse in terms of sub-weapon selection is completely negated, because there's basically no reason. People have disagreed with me on this, but in my opinion, there's basically no reason to ever use anything besides the cross. The whole like point of sub-weapons, their function is to give you angles of attack that you wouldn't otherwise have. And if the whip can already cover 8 directions, then like all that's left is to take advantage of the cross's longer horizontal range. I can think of a couple very niche uses for the axe, and then like 1 or 2 spots where the stopwatch might be good, but really like there's no reason not to just have a triple shot cross the entire time. I am gonna swap it out a couple for a stopwatch in one place, but like that was like a very specific thing. Another thing I want to talk about is whip flailing. It's the other like new like whip technique combat thing that a lot of people seem to really like, and I really don't like. I actually like it. It's actually more of a problem in my opinion than the 8-directional whipping is, because it fucks up it fucks with your air control. Like, they give Simon full air control here, right? So like and like jumping and attacking at the same time is something like you always want to do in Castlevania games. But the problem is that the way that whip flailing works is that if you keep the attack button held down and then like move the D-pad, then the game decides that you want to whip flail, and you'll start flailing the whip. The problem is that, you know, if you're like attacking, if you want to attack in midair and then air control, which you do a lot of the time, then like if you keep the button held down like for even a little bit too long, then the game suddenly decides that instead of like revving up your next whip, you want to like whip flail. And like, I don't know, maybe I'm just not good enough at the game, but I found very, very few places where whip flailing was useful. I found more on the second go-through of the game than I did when I first played, but still, like, I could count the number of places where whip flailing is useful on the fingers of one hand. Because the problem with whip flailing, as I just demonstrated there, when I bopped that big green guy a couple times, is that whip flailing does like no fucking damage. So you might think whip flailing is good because it lets you like intercept like evasive flying enemies, which were such a problem in the previous games. No, if you try to whip flail to kill a bat, you'll just delay him for a couple frames, and then he'll just walk into you, and then he'll just like fly into you. Same with birds. Same with pretty much everything. Whip flailing is only really good in the Dracula fight, and in a lot of other cases it's just sort of superfluous, in my opinion. I do get the impression from watching like other videos of people playing this game that there is sort of like a skill level to the whip flail, but like in my experience as a player, I just found it extremely frustrating. It was fucking with the way that I was used to playing these games, for really no good reason that I could determine. So I don't really like whip flailing. I don't really like 8-directional whipping, and those two things are often listed by positives. Listed as positives by a lot of people who play these games and who play this game, and that's what's complicated to me about Super Castlevania 4 compared to other games in the Castlevania series that I didn't really like. Like, I'll shit talk Circle of the Moon for days, because I just think that like when people make excuses for Circle of the Moon, I just don't understand what planet they're from. But with Super Castlevania 4, it just does seem like, it seems like more of a like a personal taste thing, where it's like some people just like the way that the game... I'm getting my I'm getting shit on here. Yeah, I'm not very good at this game, by the way, which may explain partially why I don't like it, because I usually don't like things that I'm not good at. And that goes back to what I mentioned earlier about the skill ceiling. The fact that the controls in Super Castlevania 4 are so much more complicated means that getting really, really good at the game probably takes more time, because it's less, there's more, variation, needed for your inputs. So, I don't know, maybe I'm just bad. Maybe that's why I don't like it. I don't know. But to get back to what I was saying a second ago, like, that's why I'm being a little bit more cautious with my criticisms than I otherwise might, because this game, like, there are lots of people out there who say this is like their favorite Castlevania game, or like one of the best games they've ever played. I don't get that at all. I think Dracula's Curse is a better game in pretty much every way. I think all the other 16-bit Castlevania games are better than this. And I don't know. Another thing that I want to point out, as long as because this is going to be relevant, well, this is relevant right now, is that I really don't like the level design of Super Castlevania 4, especially the early game. It kind of gets better a little bit in the middle, but I really think that the level design for most of Super Castlevania 4 is incredibly obnoxious. The fact that Simon now has full air control, I think, made them feel like they could make the platforming more complicated, and have stages like this, which are basically just very long, like, platforming sections that, to me, are just so boring. And also frustrating in the way that platforming is frustrating to me, which is that, you know, when I talked about what I liked about Dracula's Curse, what was so cool about that game to me was how important your decisions were, right? Your, like, the strategy of which sub-weapons. Right there, by the way, that's a great example of what I'm talking about. I jumped, and I was like, revving up a whip swing, but because I was trying to air control at the same time that I wanted to whip that bat, the game decided that I wanted to whip flail, so I whip flailed and didn't kill the bat, and the bat hit me. That's kind of exactly what I'm talking about. If this was any other Castlevania game, that bat would have just fucking died, because I would have just whipped it, which is what is supposed to happen when you press the B button in a Castlevania game. I don't really like platforming, like, in the way that Super Castlevania 4 does it. There's some, like, more platforming-heavy Castlevania games that I don't have a problem with, but a lot of the platforming in Super Castlevania 4 is, like, it's like a devil in the details kind of thing. It has to do with kind of the way the game looks, the way that, like, the platforms are graphically represented, and it also has to do with some of the gimmicks that the game is just enamored with. There's gonna be one coming up here in a moment. Where is it? Is there an eyeball here? I thought there was an eyeball here. Where is it? Okay, I guess it's not fucking coming. Okay, there it is. There's supposed to be, like, another one, I thought. Okay, so swinging on your whip across these little, like, grapple points is just a fucking terrible idea. Because, like, it's supposed to be cool and adventurous, but the reality is that it's always extremely dangerous, because if you get hit while you're swinging on one of those grapple points, you will fall into whatever death pit is underneath you. I don't think there's a single point in the game where if you get hit while swinging on one of those, you don't die. And because it's like this awkward back and forth swinging thing that's, like, partially controlled by the D-pad, it's, like, very imprecise. The two adjectives that I used in my first Super Castlevania 4 videos to describe the whip swinging mechanic were slippery and dangerous, and I don't think I can come up with a better description than that. And that's not really something that you want for your advanced movement options. You want it to be something that the player is excited to do because it's cool and because it's fast and because it's interesting, but instead, swinging on those grapple points becomes something that you, like, have to do rather than what you want to do. And I also want to point out, there's something very frustrating about the way that Super Castlevania 4, like, the blocks that make up the platforms are rendered at like this angle. Like you can see it right now in these. He doesn't usually do that, so I was surprised by that. Like how they're at a slight angle. And this creates, like, I don't know, this always confused me because it seems like you are put in situations sometimes in Super Castlevania 4 where, like, it feels like you have to run off of the edge of a platform to jump onto a platform above it. There's a thing earlier in the level that was, like, exactly like that that I unfortunately missed. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody. That's kind of a hard thing to, like, describe, but it has to do with the fact that the blocks are being rendered at an angle, and it makes it confusing to my brain that's used to nice, flat NES squares, as to like where I am and where the platform ends and how far I can go off of it. So just an unnecessary complication to something that was perfectly functional in the earlier games. Honestly, that's kind of the story of Super Castlevania 4. Unnecessary complications to things that were perfectly functional in the earlier games. And I know that this is gonna probably not... People are really gonna disagree with me about this, and that's okay. That's part of conversations about art involve disagreements. Why am I, like, dropping all my spaghetti here? What am I don't know why I'm not just going underneath him and then... Okay, that was so weird. That was really strange. I don't know exactly what I was thinking there. This was actually a part where I found use for whip... okay. Yeah, there we go. This was one of the new, like, uses for whip flailing that I found. And that's fine. Like, I guess I'm glad that it rewards... like creative, like thinking about the environment in a certain way. That was what I said I liked so much about Grant and Dracula's Curse, was that he changed how you thought about the environment. But it fucks with my air control, man. Like, if you're gonna give me air control, if you're gonna let me like float around while I'm jumping and attacking, like, don't fucking punish me for doing that. I don't know. I guess it's about, like, just tapping the button and, like, making absolutely sure you don't hold it for, like, the fucking margin of time that makes the game think that you want to do the whip flail. I don't know. I really fucking hate this level 2. I don't like level 3. I don't like, I think level 2 is basically fine. It's kind of... It's like a lot of birds coming at you. And by the way, I should mention this about the hard mode in Super Castlevania 4. The differences between hard mode and easy mode in or normal mode in Super Castlevania 4 are much less dramatic than the differences between normal and hard mode in Dracula's Curse. Really, no game in the franchise, I think, has a bigger distinction between normal and hard than Dracula's Curse, except, I don't know, maybe Bloodlines to a certain extent? Maybe. But in hard mode of Super Castlevania 4, really the only difference is that there's a few more bats here and there that just kind of ambush you, so... That's another criticism I have of Super Castlevania 4, is that the hard mode is, like, just terrible. It's just designed awfully. I don't know what else I can say. When I say, like, ambush bats, I mean bats that, like, if it's your first time playing hard mode, you would have no idea they were there. And they just, like, come out, sometimes from behind things on the screen, and then swoop at you and fuck you up. I just don't get it. I also don't, and I don't like level 4, I don't like this room. I'm sure this was very exciting in 1991, but I'm playing this in 2023. I don't generally believe that there's such a thing as a game being outdated, like, blanketly, or, like, anything about games, like, just because a game is like, old, or a thing in a game is old doesn't make it bad, but, like, this whole room is literally just one big waste of your time. And I'm supposed to be wowed by the graphical innovations, but I'm not. And this is like... The thing is, like, you could say, but Chauvitar, you're supposed to think about it in the context of the time that it was made, but I've never... No other game in the series requires that excuse. Like, I've never noticed in any of the previous games, or even thought about in any of the previous games, the fact that they were made, you know, like, 30 years ago. or 35 years ago. But with Super Castlevania 4, it fucking dates itself. And here's this is another, like, the fucking motion sickness room. I really don't like this either. I mean, like, layout-wise, it's fine, but, like, that spinning in the background is really, really unpleasant, in my opinion. And now it's another awful part of level 4, the waiting on floating platform stage. I don't know. It's like they were having a bad idea contest in the first levels of the game. I'm sorry if that sounds juvenile, but like I really can't. I can't explain what's happening. This part's pretty cool because this is just about like a timing. It's like a perilous. It's like an Indiana Jones running away from the rock type thing. But the first part is just, like, boring. Having 8-directional whipping also, like, removes the strategy element of sub-weapons, and it also means you don't have to think about your positioning. Well, okay, you have more options for positioning, but the options boil down to, oh right, I had to fucking piss so bad, I remember this. Because this was, like, my, like, 3rd or 4th attempt in a row. I was just having, like, stupid-ass deaths to, like, level 3 and level 2 because of the platforming. And I think a couple in level 4, too. It's just, like, and I had to fucking piss so bad, so I had to pause there. Sorry. What was I saying? Yeah, positioning. So, like, the positioning options in Super Castlevania 4 basically boil down to, like, whipping things from a million miles away in, like, a position of absolute safety. And I don't know. Maybe I'm being hypocritical, because that's kind of, like... Sometimes that's what Grant lets you do, too, is, like, lets you get into positions that are, like, advantageous and that are safer. But, I don't know. I like the mood of Super Castlevania 4. Like, it makes you feel like you're going on a journey. I like Stage 5, although there's, like, a little bit of obnoxious, variation to it, where sometimes those harpies carrying the evil jackrabbits will show up, and then sometimes they won't. And I don't know why. It's really... It's like the fucking game is haunted or something. The harpies are so inconsistent in Super Castlevania 4, and look at that! The turret just disappeared. There was another turret earlier that was, like, much closer, and it was, like, shooting fireballs. But... And the harpy shows up over there! I don't get this at all. This is why the cross is so important, by the way, because this way you can just, like, preemptively throw it all over the place to hit the fucking random spawns that Super Castlevania, that this level in particular, I guess, is so fond of. I don't know. Didn't I say I like this level? I like this level in general, because, like, the randomness is annoying, but you just have to kind of play more carefully around it and just be constantly throwing fucking crosses, and that's why the cross is so good. And I like it, I like the mood, because it's kind of like the final approach to the castle. And this is another cool thing I want to say about Super Castlevania 4. This is also why the cross is so good. Like, the fact that you could do these, like, 1-2 punches. You, like, throw the cross and then, like, follow it up with, like, a downward diagonal jump, whip. Like, that's pretty cool. That's why I'm glad that in Castlevania Chronicles, or in, like, x86, they kept the downward diagonal jump whip. You can't, like, whip 8 directions in Chronicles, but you can, whip, like, downward diagonally when you, jump, which I think is good. Because that's, like, a nice way to keep the pace of the game up, is to give you more options, to, like, attack while moving forward. So now we're in the second half of the game, or really, looking at the timestamp. When is this... When do I reach the end of the game? This is more like the last 60% of the game, honestly, because these levels are pretty long, and they're pretty tricky. Stage 6... Stage 6, I don't know. It's, like, so close to being good. It's like, I don't know, man. Something about the way that, like, enemies are placed in Super Castlevania 4 and, like, the way the level design is constructed is just so fucking annoying. Like, I feel like I'm constantly, like, what's it like? It's like the fact that there are all these bats everywhere, and this is in part a hard mode problem. It's like trying to walk across a room, and there's like Legos everywhere, and you're like constantly having to like look down at your feet and go like, oh shit, I'm about to step on a fucking Lego. Like, oh, I better like awkwardly hop around the room. I don't know. I don't know if that analogy works, but that's how I feel. And then this shit right here, like, I don't even know. This is like, I mean, this is memorable. It's no other game in the series does this, but like, this is just, I'm gonna be totally honest here about how I feel. This is just fucking stupid. Like, I don't know. It's more waiting. It's another fucking like weird slippery platforming gimmick they felt like they had to put in this level. Like every single fucking level needed one. And I don't like it personally because I have a fear of heights, and for some fucking reason this room, unique to any room in the Castlevania series, like fucks with me. Like I'm literally sitting here sweating as I watch this. I guess now that we're past that, the rest of level 6 is okay. There's a secret room you can go into if you whip one of those floor blocks, but the only reason I would ever go in there is if I had taken damage, and I haven't here. Okay, ladies. Alright. This is so fucking annoying, too. Like, the fact that, like, they make you back up so you can hit them, but then if you back up too far, they fucking respawn. Like, I never ever encountered the problem that problem in like in fucking C1 or C3. Like, oh sorry, you moved too far to kill this one enemy and now it's back again, and it's like you might as well not have fucking done anything. That really annoys me. That's why I fucking loved one of the things I really liked about Rondo of Blood was the fact that like the PC Engine CD was smart enough to remember when enemies had died, so if you killed an enemy and then you had to like move around the level, the enemy wouldn't just randomly fucking come back. I don't know. I feel like things should die when they're killed, you know what I mean? I haven't played Ninja Gaiden. I understand that shit happens a lot in Ninja Gaiden, where like enemies will just like respawn because of like weird positional quirks. I don't know, maybe it's my fault for playing hard mode, right? Like, I play hard mode and then I complain about the bats, but like, I don't know. This was the one thing I hadn't done yet. I don't understand these coffin enemies at all. This pissed me off so much. Okay, I guess that's what you're supposed to do. But like, there were so many situations where it was like, the window for... I guess that worked because the cross hit them, but like... The window for turning around and whipping them without getting hit yourself is like so small. I don't understand it at all. I don't get what the point is. I like this part. I like the mausoleum, I guess you'd call it. Bunch of skeletons to fight. I don't know. Really don't like this music though. I think I said at the start of this commentary that I like the soundtrack to Super Castlevania 4. That was like not really true. I like a couple of tracks, but I think a lot of the music in Super Castlevania 4 is either boring or just straight up bizarre. I didn't point it out because I was too busy complaining about something else, but there's a track that plays in the second half of level 3 that just sounds like just nonsense. It just sounds like people just going insane on some kind of like maniac jazz session. I think that was the exact phrasing I used in previous videos. Shit. Yeah, I was waiting to get to that rosary that I knew was in that torch before I turned around and tried whipping anything, but unfortunately one of them caught up to me. This is why the cross is good, because you'll hit shit that like you're not even aiming at. And the cross can do some really fast kills. Like, I think I'm gonna get this one pretty... No, not really very good. Oh well. I did watch a couple of speedruns of Super Castlevania 4, which I hadn't really done before, and they have some... That, I think I've heard people say, people who've speedrun multiple Castlevania games, that Super Castlevania 4 is like the hardest one to speedrun, which makes sense to me because, number one, it's a lot longer than like C1 or C3, and number two, the fact that you have full air control, the fact that you have 8-directional whipping, the fact that there's all this like tricky shit you can do means there's just like a lot more that you have to execute correctly. Whereas with like C1 or C3, because you have like the fixed jumping arcs, you can just get into a rhythm of like... All you have to think about is when you press the button, but in Super Castlevania 4 it's more complicated than that. And that's the thing that's funny, is that like, people call this game easy, and I said it was easy in my first videos, but like... I don't know. It's easy, but it's not, like, simple. And I honestly would rather do, like, if I had to pick, like, one or the other, to do a no-death run of Dracula's Curse or this game, I think I'd probably prefer to do Dracula's Curse. Like, just because, like I said, so much of how Dracula's Curse's difficulty is mitigated is just with smart decisions. And like prior knowledge. With Super Castlevania 4, a lot more of it is about like execution. So I think that, I guess if you're like a new player to both games, then Super Castlevania 4 is probably a lot easier than Dracula's Curse, but if you're like... In terms of like to what degree experience can mitigate the difficulty, I think it's much more so the case in Dracula's Curse than it is in Super Castlevania 4. But then again, I've played Dracula's Curse a lot more than Super Castlevania 4, so I'm kind of biased on that question. I fucking hate this part too, by the way. Just because of those fucking lampshades that just attack you from the next zip code. Like, stop. When you can't even fucking see them. And that's why I was like jumping down and trying to go like really fast at the start, because I wanted to get out of here as fast as possible. Because those fucking lampshades just like... I guess you have to memorize the timing or something, because there's like almost no visual indication of when they start charging at you. They just kind of like sit there for some period of time, and then they just charge at you, and like... Maybe if you have like superhuman reflexes you can react fast enough, but I'm a fucking aging person. And actually, I'm not really that old, but like my reaction time is just bad. So these things are more likely to frustrate me. Here's this level's stupid platforming gimmick. I don't know. Are there supposed to be 2 skeletons there? I feel like there aren't supposed to be 2 skeletons there. I think that's a mistake. I don't like this song either. It's boring. I mean, like, the composition is fine. Like, it's not bad. It's not, like, badly made. It's just, like, why are we listening to Tropical Bells in a satanic vampire's evil demon library? I don't get it. Like, I can't think of a single thing that this game does better than Castlevania Bloodlines. I'm gonna just say that right up front. And this is why, like, I feel like this is why my, like, criticisms for Super Castlevania 4 are, like, different than the criticisms I have for, like, Circle of the Moon or, like, Dawn of Sorrow, for example. Like, those... Like, Circle of the Moon, I guess, is, like, the quintessential example where, like... I just don't get it. Like, I just don't understand what people see in Circle of the Moon. But with Super Castlevania 4, it's like, it's stuff like, it just seems more like people are just, like, built differently, you know? Like, some people have different tastes in music, some people have different tastes in visuals, some people have different tastes in gameplay. I don't agree, but I get it. Which is why I feel, like, worse about my... I don't usually feel bad about my opinions, but that's why I feel more, like... I really wish I liked this game, you know what I mean? Because there's clearly something about it that a lot of other people have gotten a lot of enjoyment out of, but... I just can't tune into whatever that wavelength is. I haven't even talked about the boss fights. The boss fights, I don't know, like... they're not hard, like, ever. This is another reason why the cross is so good, because if you walk into a boss fight with a triple shot cross and enough hearts to hit it, then you will just win basically no matter what, because the bosses barely do any damage, and the cross will rack up a bunch of hits on them. And it's just very hard to not win against the bosses in Super Castlevania 4. Even though I think a lot of the bosses are cool in terms of their, like, visual design. Like, the enemy design is really cool. Like, that knight back there at the end of level 7 I think is pretty cool, but... Like, what did I do to fight him? I stood there and I spammed the cross. And now we're on level 8. The worst fucking level in maybe any of these games that I've ever played. So... I'm going to talk about a couple things. I want to point out, this is where the regional differences come in. In the Japanese version of Super Castlevania 4, there's blood everywhere. Like, you can see there a little pool of, like, blood back there. In the US version, everything that's red in this level was changed to green, which I don't like because a lot of Super Castlevania 4 is already green. Like, the whole game is, like, green, brown, and purple, and this level... the red in this level adds a little bit of much-needed variety, but then that was removed in the US version, because the thing about, like, US censors is there are two things they really don't like. They don't like sexuality, and they don't like blood. Violence is okay, but, like, sex and blood are bad, so... And that's true to this day, but that was much more so the case in 1991. So, the reason this level is so terrible is because it is just a gigantic parade of insta-kill gimmicks. Everything with spikes on it that you see in this level will insta-kill you. Including if you just contact it from the side. Which took a little bit of adjusting to. And it's just all about, like... I mean, it's just like platforming, and then if you fuck it up, you get insta-killed. Which is exactly the kind of thing that I hate in games like this. I also want to point out something about this part right here, too, with these two things coming down, is that you can time it so that you, oh, this is where I start using the stopwatch, right? So usually in Super Castlevania 4, if a moving platform... If you're on a platform that's moving up, and you so much as brush against the fucking very edge of a platform that's above you, you instantly die. But for some fucking reason, those two spike platforms going up and down back there that I had to jump between, or that I had to, like, jump under, you can jump on top of one of them, and then it will just lift you up into the ceiling. Which isn't, like, really easier, necessarily, than what I did, but... is an option that I never in a million years would have thought I had. That was frustrating. I picked up the stopwatch, like killing that bone dragon with it was nice, but really I picked it up for that part. Because I just had a really hard time figuring out the timing for jumping across that crumbling bridge and not getting hit by the bat, and the stopwatch was just the best solution that I was able to come up with. More waiting. Waiting for spike platforms to move up and down. So much fun. Best game in the series. No, stop. Don't be a fucking asshole. I gotta... I don't know, level 8 is just like... I mean, this is so bad. Even people who like this game, I think, say that this is the worst level in the game. Maybe I just don't have, like, the... Maybe my heart is just made of coal. I don't have the... whatever gland is necessary to just appreciate the adventure and stop thinking about the actual game that I'm playing. I don't know. I like the backgrounds. I like the fact that it's like a blood sewer. I think that's pretty cool. This is so much fun too. I love this. You actually can walk through this like normally if you know where the spikes are going to come down ahead of time, but like it's always safer to do this. And now we come to my favorite thing ever, the 8-2 disappearing bridge. This pause is not a piss break. This pause is a save state. I'm not going to say segmented in the title. I'm not going to apologize for doing that. I'm not going to offer any excuse. What I'm going to offer is a rational explanation. So, for the longest time, I thought that the 8-2 bridge, with the bits of it that randomly disappear, was something that probably did have a pattern, but that was, like, that I just couldn't figure out. That was my assumption for a very long time, so I was frustrated by it, but I kind of always thought in the back of my mind, you know, there's probably a way to get through this. There's probably, like, just some trick that I don't get. So when I decided to go back to Super Castlevania 4, I finally looked up some speedruns to see what speedrunners have to say about it, because I'm thinking, well, you know, this is an insta-kill hazard, you know, like halfway, you know, a great deal of the way through the run. So obviously speedrunners, the people who dissect games down to their tiniest detail to squeeze every millisecond they can out of a run of it, would obviously have some kind of trick, right, for the 8-2 bridge. Do you know what speedrunners call the 8-2 bridge? They call it the Vegas Bridge. Do you know why they call it the Vegas Bridge? Because it's all fucking random. It's a fucking slot machine. Speedrunners just get there and they just hope. I think they said there's like a fast way to do it that like is risky, and then there's like a slow way that has about a 50% chance of success. And that's speedrunners. These are people who are like the most autistic about playing these games and finding every last little... They say it's random. So, the developers of Super Castlevania 4, the best game in the series, according to some people, decided that, 40 minutes into the run, they were just gonna randomly kill the player. Are you fucking kidding me? And the thing is, there's like smart and there's dumb ways to do the 8-2 bridge. Like, there is a level of skill to it, but like, you can just get fucked. You can do everything right, you can make the correct decisions, you can go on a smart timing, and then the platforms can still just not be there when you need them to be there. And I am just in absolute shock at that. Because even when I complained about the 8-2 bridge in my previous videos, I always thought in the back of my mind, I bet I'm just too dumb to figure this out. I bet there's a trick that somebody out there knows. No, it's random. It's random. 40 minutes into the run, they flip a fucking coin, and if it lands tails, the player dies. What the fuck? People talk about how hard Dracula's Curse is. Nothing in Dracula's Curse is that bad. Nothing in Dracula's Curse just randomly kills the player for no fucking reason. I think that is absolutely categorically inexcusable. And nothing else in the series does that. In no other game in the Castlevania series, maybe Haunted Castle does some stupid shit like that. I don't know. I didn't play Haunted Castle, but no other game that I have played will just randomly kill you. I mean, I can't stress enough how upsetting that is. As somebody who lost no-death attempts to that shit. And that is something that I just categorically reject. And I'm playing on emulator, I have the power of save states, the Konami devs say, hey, guess what, you're 40 minutes into the run, we're gonna randomly kill you now. No, you won't. No, you won't. I'm gonna save state, and if I die on your dumb RNG shit, I'm gonna reload, and then I'm gonna get back to playing the actual game. So that's what that was. I mean, that is really just like shocking to me. That's some fucking like NES like RPG shit. Like random insta-kills. Literally random. So there's nothing more I think I even can say about that. And that's why level 8 is the worst level in any Castlevania game. I don't think Super Castlevania 4 is the worst Castlevania game. I think it's actually still got a lot going for it, but that in particular means that that puts a hard ceiling on how highly I can rate this game. I mean, that is just fucking ridiculous. And even outside of the context of like a no-death run, even if you're just doing like a 1cc or like a casual playthrough, like, if you die there, now you have to go back and do all that boring shit in that stage again. Because I think it brings you back to the stairs before the two big, like, spike blocks. So, like, even if you're not, like, going for a no-death, like, the game is randomly killing you and making you do more boring shit again. And I spent the entirety of this level talking about the 8-2 bridge because of how mad it made me, but, I like level 9 generally. I think it's, like, it's kind of, like, as far as, like, for a Super Castlevania 4 level, I think it's, like, just pretty average. It doesn't piss me off too much. It has, like, the standard Super Castlevania 4 helping of, like, annoying shit, like coffins and, a couple, like, obnoxious bats in, like, the first stage. But I like this boss because this boss actually feels like a real boss fight, where you have to, like, react to his patterns and you have to, like, think about your positioning and you can't just, like, spam the cross and just expect to win. You kind of can at the end, but even then you have to, like, make sure you're spamming the cross at the right spot in the right altitude, so... I actually like the level 9 boss a lot, and I think it's a cool level concept, like the treasury. That, I think, doesn't show up in any other Castlevania games. Well, there's a treasury in Harmony of Dissonance, but it doesn't really look like a treasury. The game just tells you it's a treasury. That looks like a treasury. That's, like, really cool. And it's also, like, sort of thematically fitting, because it's all about the worldly advantages that Dracula offers you in his satanic bargains. Because, you know, they always say in these games, oh, Dracula is fulfilling the wishes of humanity, but, like, that's never really... Seeing that Dracula has a giant pile of cash in his castle kind of gives that a little bit more, like, credibility, I suppose. Oh, man. Okay, so now that we're remixing tracks from the earlier games, the soundtrack has become good again. So, Clock Tower level. I used to really not like this level. I think I talked a lot of shit about it in my earlier videos. Now, I think I'm kind of mellowed out about it, partially just because of, like, the contrast with the 8-2 bridge, where, like, as annoying as some of the platforming in the Clock Tower is, like, it's not randomly killing you, and that's now the grading scale that I'm operating on with Super Castlevania 4 is, do my inputs actually matter to the outcome of this particular section of the game? Oh, they do? Good. That means I'm happy with it. That's what I've been reduced to. Oh, Jesus Christ, that was close. Okay. Yeah, that's tricky. Sometimes that Bone Swordsman can, like, jump into the pit and just kill himself, but sometimes if you're trying to, like, maintain your positioning over on those gears, he'll jump over into you and knock you off and kill you, so... That's tricky. I don't know, like, as far as Clock Tower levels go, like, because the Clock Tower levels are, like, supposed to be, like, weird, annoying platforming shit happening, so I kind of give it a pass here when I didn't before. If ever there was a place for it, it's in the Clock Tower levels. I kind of have a tolerance for it in that concept, in that context, rather. Okay. I fucking hate this part, though. Just because it's like a really specific timing to jump off of that gear, to reach that next platform without falling in the pit. And then this is actually pretty consistent. I was able to get that every time, to, like, land on the correct timing to kill that Bone Swordsman. This is like, I don't like those falling gears because they're the kind of thing that... It's like the bats I was talking about before, like you would never know those were coming if it was the first time you were playing the game. Although then again, Chronicles does the same shit, and I didn't really give Chronicles too much crap for it, so... I'll leave it alone. I don't mind the swinging like grapple points if it's like if there's basically no like risk of danger involved. But when like you're swinging back and forth and like enemies could theoretically attack you, that's when it becomes really obnoxious. Here I was able to find a way to avoid that, so I guess that's nice. That's like one of the few times when the game feels a little bit like Dracula's Curse. Like, here's a really tricky situation, but also we gave you the solution for it if you were able to think, like, correctly with the tools that you've been given. It's crazy how nerfed the knights are. That's not a complaint, it's just funny, because like in C1 the knights take 9 hits to kill, and then in C3 it's like 6 in, or no, it's 8 in US and then 6 in JP, I think? And now here it's just 4. Whatever. Keeps the pacing up. God knows Super Castlevania 4 has some pacing issues. So, anything that alleviates that I should be in favor of. And now the boss. I think I fucked this up a little bit. There's a, I used to bring the holy water to this boss, but I learned, thanks to some of the speedrunning videos I watched, that there's some pretty slick stuff you can do with the cross on this guy. You can rack up pretty much exactly the same amount of damage that the holy water would, and sometimes even more if he's in the right position. And I don't know, but I don't know if he's going to be necessarily in this fight. Wow, this is actually going pretty well. I thought I was gonna... Okay, wow. Well, alright. 2-phase. I guess I can't complain about that. No, I think it was my original Super Castlevania 4 footage, the old footage, where I, like, almost died on that boss, because I got cocky or something. I don't remember what happened. Stage B. Stage B. Stage B. We're almost at the end of the game. This was the other, like, major use of whip flailing that I eventually discovered, because trying to navigate this part with these guys is actually kind of tricky. Like, it's just hard to, like... They have a habit of, like, turning around when you don't expect them to, and they'll, like, catch you, like, in midair or something. I think I brought the holy water too to deal with these guys partially, because that just made it easier to, because that way I could hit them from above, but whip flailing, excuse me, or like whip, just dangling your whip accomplishes the same thing, so ultimately it wasn't necessary. I think this part of Stage B is more of like a spectacle thing than any kind of challenge. I don't know, maybe the game is trying to bait you into trying to whip the torches, but why would you ever do that? You gotta keep running from the fucking scary bats. Okay, and now we get to my second least favorite part of the game. First of all, I think it's funny that beginning from Dracula's Curse is playing in this stage, because this is like the stairs stage, and Dracula's Curse was like the stairs game. The reason that I don't like the stage is because, as I just demonstrated there, sometimes, for reasons that are utterly mysterious to me, you will jump onto a staircase and then you'll fall right through it. And there are parts in this stage where if that happens, you will die. I really don't know what it is. People have said in the past that, like, hitting not just up, but also a directional button can kind of alleviate that. Like, I'm not the only person who's had this problem of just, like, randomly falling through the stairs. But I don't know. This is the game's, like, final insta-kill gimmicks. the rotating blade with the stairs that collapse out from under you, and now this part, which is mostly okay, but some really dumb shit can happen at the end. For the most part, it's just about like keeping the pace up and making sure you're going from platform to platform and not spending too much time on them, making sure you're like constantly going to the left. This part's pretty interesting. This is where you can like take advantage of 8-directional whipping in ways that I think are actually kind of cool. There's a lot of like verticality and a lot of enemies that are vulnerable from kind of odd angles. I know this is the kind of thing that I was complaining about earlier, but for some reason I think it's okay here, just because the situation is, if you don't take advantage of this, then the situation is just, like, so dangerous, and it's so easy to accidentally get knocked off the edge. Because the thing about Super Castlevania 4 that I failed to mention is that once the screen goes up to a certain level, if you can't like fall back down to the level. If you hit the bottom of the screen in Super Castlevania 4 ever, you die. And the dumb shit that can happen here is that if you're too far over to the left, that was so fucking close. I didn't even do anything wrong. Like, I almost died there, and I don't even really feel like I did anything wrong. What can happen is if you're too far over to the left, then one of those floating platforms can, like, sandwich you between the platform moving up and then the ledge on the left, and you get killed. That happened to me once. It was infuriating. So now we are in the very end of the game, and I've talked a lot of shit about Super Castlevania 4. I've talked a lot of shit about the end, the last half in particular, but I think that the very end of Super Castlevania 4 is fucking superb. I love the Slogra fight. It's one of my favorite boss fights. Partially it's just because I think Slogra is a really cool design, and partially because it's just a really, really stringent test of, like, timing. Because the way the fight works conceptually is that you can consistently avoid taking damage in Phase 1 of Slogra, but then in Phase 2, it's a lot easier to take damage from him because he can move so fucking fast. And sometimes he can, like, lunge at you right when he falls down, and it's, like, really hard to dodge, but it is dodgeable. You just have to jump on the on a really tight timing. And here he's being extremely nice to me. He hasn't given me any instant lunges for me to draw. Okay, there's one. There's one. But prior to that, he hasn't been giving me that many, like, instant lunges for me to dodge, so he's been pretty merciful. But yeah, this whole last section of the game, because there's going to be basically 4 boss fights in a row, Slogra, Gaben, Death, and then Dracula. I love this part, because this is where, like, the combat mechanics of Super Castlevania 4, I think, really shine. Slogra and Gaben and Death all really encourage you to take advantage of the multi-directional whipping and the air control and all the advantages that have been conferred on you. And I think I actually fucked this one up, because I wanted to no damage, like, all of them, of course, but yeah, I think what happened there was I ducked when I should have just stood there and whipped the fireball. I forgot whether the fireball came out at, like, whippable height or if I had to duck or not, and unfortunately that lapse in memory cost me the no damage, but oh well. Oh well. At least I no damage Slogra. That's kind of what I really wanted. And that's important to not take too much damage on Gaben, because the game only gives you one small meat before the death fight. Now the death fight was something that I had, like, a strategy for in my earlier videos that was, like, functional, but, like, wasn't very exciting. I think I just kind of stood around in the middle of the room and whip flailed and just kind of waited for him to do something, but here I decided to be a little bit more proactive because I knew I could afford it with all the health that I have. Ultimately, I still didn't really get much done before he went down to the corner and started doing his little vortex attack, which is usually when you can rack up the most damage if you master this, like, little turnaround in midair. Yeah, this fight's actually pretty sloppy. This is pretty bad, but whatever. I don't remember... because I had a strategy there for, like, getting back to that safe spot in the corner after the vortex attack, but I guess I must just not have done it fast enough. I don't know. I don't know what exactly went wrong there. It's been too long, and I didn't really... You don't really have to think too hard about that fight if you go into it with full health, so I didn't. And now I don't have to do any heart farming, thanks to that little invisible platform there. Fun fact, when I was getting my my first batch of footage for Super Castlevania 4, I once lost a Deathless run from accidentally walking off of that invisible platform. It which is probably the stupidest death I've ever had in any of these games. So the Dracula fight, is actually, like, really good. Like, a lot of people, I've heard some criticisms about this fight that, like, oh, you know, he never turns into a big goofy monster in this fight, but I think it's actually a really great test of, like, all of the tools that Super Castlevania 4 gives you. Like, the cross is really important, whip flailing is, like, more important here, I think, than any other point in the game. I honestly don't know how else you're supposed to handle his fireball attack, except for, like, whip flailing it and then, like, hitting it with a sub-weapon. And then, when he summons the two fireballs, the two, like, fire spirits here, this is where air control becomes super important. Because, like, that little move there, like, turning and whipping and then, like, air controlling away is, like, the best way to deal with them. So, I really like this fight. I like pretty much everything about it. It feels like this whole ending boss rush feels like the game is finally taking advantage of, like, the interesting combat possibilities after it's just, like, been fucking around with spikes and platforming for the past, like, hour, or for the past, like, 40, like, 50 minutes. Now it's finally, like, cool. I don't know. Here's the second phase. The trick here was in that I eventually... I wanted to no damage this. I'm kind of upset that I didn't. What I kind of started doing when I was doing the second phase of this fight was I was trying to, like, air control to dodge the lightning. So if you're, like, mid-air when the lightning spawns, then you can just, like, get an air control out of the, when the lightning starts to spawn, you can, like, air control out of the way of it preemptively. I kind of found that easier than, just running out of the way. I don't know. And there it is. Dracula goes down. And I love the fact that it plays Simon's theme in the second phase of the fight, too. That kind of makes up for the fact that the second phase isn't a big, goofy monster, in my opinion. I talked some shit about the soundtrack. I think Simon's theme is great. I love the atmosphere and the ending after you kill Dracula. I love this music, too. Maybe the best credits music in any of these games. It's such a shame, man. It's such a shame. I also think that they fucked up real bad with some of the environment design on these last boss rooms. I think the curtains on the death fight should have been red. The curtains in Dracula's throne room probably should have been red, but they had this, like, real fixation on green, brown, and purple with Super Castlevania 4 that I can't explain. Oh, man. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry for you love this game, and you had to sit here and listen to... Well, you didn't have to, but... If you sit here and listen to me talk shit for, like, an hour, you know, I'm not passing any judgment on anybody's, you know... I'm not passing any judgment on any people. I'm just being honest about how I feel about a video game. There's just these little flashes of brilliance buried under some very, very questionable decisions and a really strange set of priorities. And that is what I'll say. You know, Super Castlevania 4 doesn't feel like any other game in the series. In terms of, like, distinct, it's having a distinct identity, I would say it's probably unmatched. I just think that distinct identity comes with positive and negative components. And that's why I kind of feel like I wouldn't... Like, there have been other games that I've criticized in the past that I've given suggestions on, like, how to fix or how to improve. But the thing about Super Castlevania 4 is that, like... anything that I would suggest would dilute its identity. You know what I mean? Like, if I said, oh, they should get rid of 8-directional whipping, they should have got rid of whip flailing, well, then it's not Super Castlevania 4 anymore, you know? They should have made it shorter, the levels are too long. Well, then it's not Super Castlevania 4 anymore. And I guess that should be worth something, I think. The thing about like Super Castlevania 4 is that it's not like the reason I hate Circle of the Moon so much, the reason I hate Dawn of Sorrow so much is because there's farming in those games. And farming is just tedium. It's just anti-gameplay. Nothing in Super Castlevania 4 is like that, except for the A2 bridge. The A2 bridge is like anti-game design. That's like completely fucking inexplicable to me. But in terms of its baseline mechanics, you know, it's just a really weird classic Castlevania game. And it's a game that some people find a lot of enjoyment in, and that some people really, really enjoy, or really, really appreciate for all of its unique properties. I just wish that I could be one of them. And the thing is that, like, I don't usually, like, say... I haven't, like, talked about this yet, because I was going to save this for the end of all these videos, but I'll just say this for now. I would actually recommend this game. I realize it's going to sound insane, given how much shit that I've talked, but I would recommend it just because, like, there are so many people out there who seem to really, really click with it. And don't let my, you know, my Grinch complaints, like, dissuade you from trying this, because for every person out there like me who says, oh, I don't like the 8-directional whipping, I don't like this, I don't like that, there's about 5 people who say those are the things that make it one of the best in the series. So definitely play it for yourself, form your own opinion. If it clicks, then you wouldn't want to miss out on that. And play the Japanese version if you can, because I think it looks better. Level 8, the blood, and then all the crosses on everything. There's no gameplay differences between the regions like in Dracula's Curse, as far as I'm aware. Just aesthetic ones, and the Japanese one definitely looks better. So that's Super Castlevania 4. I got kind of heated there when I was talking about the A2 bridge. I apologize for that, but I'm passionate about this stuff, you know what I mean? I care. If I didn't care, I wouldn't be making these videos. I'm going to keep on powering through. I'm very glad that I got a chance to get back to this and kind of clarify some of my positions. And if anybody disagrees with me or like has anything to say about this, please leave a comment. You know, this is a robust discussion. And if you're not going to do that, then just hang in there and keep on earth rocking. Actually, earth rock either way. Earth rocking is very important.